Welcome to the Listen for Life podcast with Genevieve Richardson. Genevieve is a speech-language pathologist rehabilitating adults with communication challenges after a stroke or due to a neurological impairment. Get equipped with knowledge from experts in the field and professionals you need to know. We'll hear stories and experiences from others who are navigating life with aphasia. So, put your earphones in and take a walk outside. This isn't just a podcast. This is a community, a resource, and a support system. We're in this together. Do life.
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm happy to be here.
So we'll jump right in. Last year, you and I met on LinkedIn first, and then at the Texas Speech Language Hearing Association.
Yes.
I have come across your name for years and years and years in the speech pathology profession. It started with the courses you teach on MedBridge. And what I found really interesting is I was getting ready to go to the Texas Speech Hearing Association last year. I was on LinkedIn thinking, who should I make sure I meet up with at the convention? And your name popped up, and I cold messaged you through LinkedIn. And then when we met at the convention, it was like I've known you forever.
Yes. I loved meeting you.
What I love about what you have done in this profession is that you serve not only adults with communication disorders in a lot of different ways, you also serve the speech pathologists who serve adults with communication disorders. Can you tell me a little bit about what brought you into speech pathology, and then how did you get into the adult space?
Yeah, so sometimes it feels like it was all an accident, but then you realize it was all meant to be. I had many majors in college, undergrad. I loved them all, mostly engineering and different sciences. And then finally, because I was on the debate team and traveling to speeches, I met a speech pathology graduate student, and I thought that is my calling. It includes all the things I want to do. So went to grad school, but I was convinced I wanted to work with a professional speaker and singer. And that's why I went to Memphis State, which is now University of Memphis. Then my next to last semester, I was sent to the VA to be a speech pathology in their gerontology area. And back then they called it interdisciplinary team training of geriatrics. I fell in love with geriatrics, the complexity of their needs, the respect for them, for their families, for understanding the whole big picture. It's complicated. And any little part that I could play in their lives was so rewarding. So that became my calling. And so I've done that pretty much ever since. And I went into skilled nursing facilities right out of grad school. And one year out, really the day that I finished my clinical fellowship, I was asked to be the state manager of Tennessee because my supervisor was moving away. So I continued to see patients, clients, residents, whatever they chose to be called, and to supervise and to expand across several states. I ended up managing 3 or 4 states. Anyway, and that just sort of evolved. And during that time, I loved to teach. So I started teaching, and I thought, well, there was a better way I could have learned that. And so then I would want to teach it. So I've taught over 400 courses now at the continuing education level. And now a lot that I teach are interprofessional. So they are, in addition to speech pathologists, they're also to nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, social workers, athletic trainers. Because the more we learn about each other and the more we teach them about what we do, then the better we know to refer to each other and call each other and communicate. So I really love all of that. And I thrive on getting to teach and hearing feedback. And I learn from the people I teach. So I travel around the country for different national professional education groups. And a lot of them are physical and occupational therapy who come to those meetings. And I learn from them and they learn from me. And, no one's an island. I really believe that. So it's a joy.
Yeah, your courses are wonderful, Lisa. So, was that a private practice when you were in the skilled nursing? It was somebody else's company? That was your company?
No, it was one of the first national therapy
Nash.
contract companies. One of the first ones was called InSpeech, and from there NovaCare branched off, but also from InSpeech Communicare Pro Rehab branched off, and that's the one I worked for. So it was the late 80s because I'm getting old. um, and it was just, they were all over the country, and there weren't that many companies at the time. And so I started with 16 contracts that I was over for that company, and it expanded to like 50 across Tennessee very quickly. And then I got 45 more in Arkansas and 80 more in Texas and several in Kansas. And so I
Wow.
got to work with some brilliant people that I still am very thankful for. Valerie Quinter was my first, she was my CF supervisor. I learned a lot from a lot of people in that company. And one of them is still around. Sally McNamara is, I'm a stamp now, stands for State Advocate of Medicare Policy. And that I'm a liaison for ASHA to Texas. And Sally is still a stamp. She's a Medicare advocate for Medicare policy for Ohio. I still see her, and she was one of my first mentors way back then. So it's a small world that we're in, and we all learn from each other.
So I love the direct patient care, the supervising, the education to speech pathologists, and now you're talking about the politics, kind of the administration, the politics of not only our profession, but how we interact with other agencies like Medicare, and
Yes,
how we interact with our national association, which is ASHA.
right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly of being in administrate, kind of this being the liaison between us that are working full-time clinically versus those that are running these big agencies like Medicare and ASHA?
Yeah. Well, the word I use is advocacy. So we
Love
are
it.
first, we all are advocates for our clients that we see, for their families, for the organizations where we work, for our profession. And that's complicated. And so one thing that I guess a role that I serve, and there's another state advocate for Medicare policy in Texas. Her name is Mindy Lancaster, and we work together. We're accountable to each other to getting the information out to the rest of Texas. We are both on those calls every month with ASHA. And the complicated thing is all the rules change. So every
Yes.
year, the rules are subject to change. It comes out around June or July. They call it the final rule, which is hilarious because there's no such thing as final. And then it's out for public comments. And then they finally all public comments all go in. And then the changes are announced sometime in September. As of October 1, this is the new rules. Sometimes there's not very much that affects us. Sometimes it's huge. Lots of things affect us. And so ASHA has a lot of pretty amazing people that impress me, who are lobbyists for us on our behalf, that they do that full time. So they keep us updated on a monthly basis of what's happening. And then they
Mm,
let us know how we can be a voice at our state level. But the thing is, whatever's happening at the federal level is going to eventually affect everybody.
sure.
So right now we're dealing with the fee schedule. The fee schedule was cut yet again. And every year, our lobbyist of ASHA, APTA, and AOTA, along with other healthcare organizations and groups, say that won't work. We can't afford these cuts. And so then we get a patch, and like, for example, on March the 8th, I think they passed a rule to give us another 1.7% because we were recently cut 3.4%. And we being 37 different professions, anyone who sees a Part B CPT code. So, we work with that, but we're also working on further legislation altogether because no one lobbyist can do it by themselves. So we work on that, but then we have to get the information out to everybody. And some people still have old information and they don't know the current information. They don't know what's required per code that we bill. And it's different with Medicare, Medicare Advantage, private insurance they all have different rules, but it's, there's a lot that comes from whatever that national, federal fee schedule is. All the other payer sources can say, well, because Medicare did that, here's what we're going to do. So
Mhm.
if we all stay on top of it, keep each other informed and educated, then we move forward together.
Absolutely. And I love that you're the liaison with the national and at the state level, because I've learned so much from you and those committees that you've served on that disseminate the information to us clinicians, because Medicare is a big part of the population we serve
Right.
here. And although this audience is primarily aphasia related families and persons with aphasia, I think it's really important for them to understand there's a big, big picture behind
Yes.
Medicare and the rules and how us clinicians work within it so that we can deliver the service
Right.
that they need in the best way that we can.
Yes. And we're always here to help each of those families. So I have seen clients, I'll start with that word, at the skilled nursing setting, at the home health setting, and the outpatient clinic setting. And it's often the families that I most directly communicate with, because they're trying to figure out this maze of every year being told you've got to switch to this Medicare Advantage program, or you'll get different dental benefits or different. And it is a maze. It's complicated. I mean, for all of us. And so we're all here to help each of them, to help each other, to figure out all of those complications.
Definitely. One of the interviewees I've had on, her name is Dana, and she's a specialist in Medicare insurance. And
Hmm.
so she likes to come on the podcast and talk about, what's the latest going on with Medicare? What does Part B mean? What I like about our interview here, Lisa, is that we're helping to pull together a bigger picture for this aphasia community and what all is involved. It's not just speech therapy, giving a technique. We have to back out from that and look at the whole
Yes.
person, whole family. Then we have to look at the bigger picture. How do speech pathologists work within the system? How do we get information? How does that go up to the state level, to the federal level, and so on and so forth? It's easy to get caught up in the weeds, right? The day to day, but there is a bigger picture here.
Yes. And if we're empowered to know all of those pieces, then we can do our job to help each person get better and be the best that they can be. So
Absolutely.
it's hard to stay up to date on all of that, but we can. It's possible
Yeah,
because we have each other, we have resources.
that's right. That's right. Well, I would love to pivot now. You shared with me this week that you wrote a book. Tell us your working title and how did this come about?
Yeah, I'll try to keep that short because it's kind of a long story. So the working title at this point is Resilience: Rising Above Life's Challenges.
Love
And
it.
it started, I guess, several years ago. I started researching and teaching courses on stress management. Initially, it was some courses. One, like 20 years ago, was to social workers. And then I would send my Vita out of all the courses I've taught. And so about 10 years ago, somebody said, could you do that for stress management for the caregivers? And so that became a big passion for many, many years. It still is, because I saw so many family members who were struggling because they gave 150% to their loved one and they weren't taking care of themselves because they just didn't have the time
Right.
and they didn't realize the priority. And so I've taught a few courses called Put on Your Oxygen Mask First. And it was
Mm-hmm.
all about, if you're on a plane, they say, okay, put your own oxygen mask first. Take just a few seconds to do that and then spend all of your time on your loved one. Because if you take a whole 5 minutes trying to adjust and fix your loved one, then you're gonna run out of air. You're gonna pass out. You're gonna die. Something bad's gonna happen, and that very much so. I see that parallel with the caregivers all the time. So I encourage the caregiver, take a walk. Don't forget your own doctor appointment. Don't forget, some stress management strategy. So I help them because If one day you're not around because you have the flu or you're hospitalized because you collapse, no one is going to be there for your loved one. So focus on yourself, even if it's just 10 minutes a day, and you're going to be around to take care of them. So that became a passion for a long, long time. And then I taught a course, I've taught a couple of 2 or 3 hour courses of health, of stress management for the healthcare worker, team member, whatever. And all that was before COVID. And so then during COVID, that became a big deal. So I taught more about that. So early in 22, I got this idea. I want to write a book about resilience because it's not just stress management, but it's how your brain and your body is set up to withstand different challenges and different blows. And stress management is a way to do that. Think of yourself as a little raft that's got a hole in it, and you're out in the middle of the ocean and a big storm comes up and you're not going to be able to survive, versus if you were in a big ship and it's strong and it's powerful and you don't even notice the storm. So that's two different levels. One is the raft is not resilient, the big boat is. So how you prepare yourself and your body and your mind makes you better able to handle all the stuff that comes along. So that's the concept of resilience. And so I thought I want to do this for different people. It is a Christian based book, so it brings up, things like prayer and some Bible examples, but that's really only a couple of chapters. There's so much more about just how our brains work and how it can withstand things and things that we can do, strategies that we can do so that we're stronger and can handle it and move forward, move on. So then in September, my husband was diagnosed with throat cancer. He had already been diagnosed with a pre-leukemia. That's a very long story. So that's a couple of chapters in it because I became the caregiver that I had been trying so desperately to help for those many years. I'm still helping caregivers, but I began to see it firsthand. So that's a long story in itself. He ended up passing away last April. And so I started just trying to employ all the things that I had studied about. I have got to develop resiliency. I've got to get out and go for walks. I've got to practice what I preach. So getting through that and past it and creating those own strategies for me, I think has helped me to get through some other things and to help other people. And that's what it's really all about. And even at the end of the book, it's, if you are a caregiver with seemingly no time and you're overwhelmed, or if you're just somebody who works and you're very busy and you take care of many levels and you have way too many responsibilities, or if you're someone who doesn't have the ability at all to exercise, or you have limited ability to exercise. So there's different scenarios. Like, here's a place to start. Here's 3 little simple steps for this person, for this person, for this person. Just so it's not so overwhelming. Where do I start? What do I do? So hopefully it'll be out July or August. So we'll see. I'm excited though.
I think it is so needed. It is so much needed. I do talk about with my families resiliency. We talked about it on this podcast and how first you have to realize you deserve to be resilient.
Yes.
You deserve to have 10 minutes to breathe, to de-stress. And then how does one even do it? So could you give us a couple of examples, Lisa? Somebody who's tremendously overwhelmed with new caregiving responsibilities, where could she start?
Yeah. So first of all, realize I'm going to give you a simple little thing to understand about how the human brain works. So all of us, all humans and all animals, have something called the CTRA, conservative transcriptional response to adversity. You know it as fight or flight. So we all have that ability to, if we see danger, we're going to either be able to run or fight, and our bodies tense up, our blood pressure increases, all kinds of things happen to give us that ability to run or fight or do whatever we have to do. But when that happens, if something goes up, something else has to go down. And the thing that goes down is our immunity. and we start developing more inflammation. So the difference in humans and animals is that an animal, once the threat is gone, they start calming down. And within a few hours, they're completely back to normal. A human being is way higher level than that. And we have the ability to constantly fear, what if something's about to happen? What are we going to do? So we never go back down to where we relax. So when you live in a state of stress, which you do as a caregiver, for instance, what if my husband falls out of his chair? What if, he goes to the hospital? What if we lose our financial backing? What if this happens? What if that happens? And if you live in that state of fear, your body's going to constantly pour out, release this cortisol and adrenaline. They're called stress hormones, and you're going to live in a state of stress. Medium term state restress. If you live in that for a few days or a few weeks or a few years, you're going to have more and more inflammation, which leads to more and more disease processes like diabetes, anemia, arthritis. That is all from inflammation, and that inflammation is constant because of that stress. So when you think about it that way, you think about, I have got to get a grip. I have got to decrease, not get a grip in terms of something's wrong with me, but I've got to allow myself a break.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so to stop that constant adrenaline and cortisol pumping and flowing, where you're living in that state of chronic stress, which becomes chronic disease, you can do simple things like box breathing, where you inhale for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds. And when you do that, I mean, Navy SEALs do this. Anybody can do this. It does not take tremendous physical ability. It forces your body to start releasing that. You can laugh. When you find something to laugh so hard and you think, there's no way I can laugh, I'm so stressed. Look at something crazy, a cat video or something. I Love Lucy or something that just makes you laugh, and you're going to stop releasing those things. Get outside, go for a walk. There's so many things you can do. Stretch. You've got to stop your body from releasing that. Pay attention to your sleep, your hydration. Even a little bit of dehydration can really mess with your brain, can increase your fatigue, your exhaustion, your stress levels. Eat healthy foods. So some very simple things can dramatically change your life. And if you think about it this way, Katie Sloan was the president of Leading Age, which is a senior retirement organization, a nonprofit. And she said, if you're going this direction, and you're going to get to this point because you're always going this direction, and this is not a good point. You want to get over here. If you make one slight change, just a little change in your everyday, you're going to end up a complete different direction because you made a tiny little change. So little bitty changes make a giant difference. So I encourage, people to start with very simple things. It doesn't require going to a gym to work out 2 hours every day or dramatically changing how you
That's right.
live, but just simple, basic things to give yourself a break and let
Yes.
people help you. When somebody says, how can I help? And you don't know, you just say, I don't know, I've got it. And you try to take on the world. Think about, well, you could come help me clean my house, or you could mow my yard for me, or you could come sit with my husband or wife or mother, whoever, while I just run to the store or get out and go do
Yes.
something. So yes, accept that.
We have to allow people to help. I was literally just writing this, Lisa, because we get so caught up in, I can only do these tasks this way, otherwise I got to go behind them and clean up. It just doesn't matter. Let it go. That's not the hill you need to die on.
That's right.
Somebody offers, say yes,
Yes.
and then give them some choices. Better yet, if you're a caregiver, why don't you make a list of all the different things that you do, and then
Yes.
see and start identifying, even if it's just a small piece of a task,
Mm-hmm.
what can they do?
So when
Swing
somebody
by.
asks, you say, well, let me look at my list.
Yes, let me look at my list. We get kind of blindsided when we're in that fight or flight. We are just trying to survive. And so many of our caregivers are there that they don't know how to let it go. So I think I'm a list maker. You should,
Yes.
yeah. I made a list about 10 minutes ago before we came on this session, but I have to see it because I have to get it out of my head. And the
Yeah.
other strategy I personally have to do, I have to make these lists, and I make them at the end of my workday when I'm
Yeah.
starting
I
the
do too.
practice of shutting down my office at night. I work out of my home. And you guys
I
get to
do
see my
too.
office. Exactly. I have to shut down my office, and the way to shut it down is for me to sit here, look at tomorrow,
Right.
write everything that's in my head, even as minuscule as it might be, get it written down. And then I don't have it running around in my head all night like a hamster on a wheel. Like, I
Exactly.
can't forget that. I can't forget it.
And you can
And I
release it. Once you've written it down, it's done. It'll happen tomorrow. I'll get it all done. I don't have to think about it. And you've just given your brain a break.
give the brain a break, which leads to hopefully a little relaxing before you go to sleep. Maybe you can find a little gratitude, just say,
Yes.
I love to celebrate wins. That's what I talk about with my clients. What
Yes.
what was a win today? And focus on it for a moment. It only has to be a moment. And then hopefully if you've emptied your brain, you've relaxed for a minute, you celebrate a win, then hopefully you can get some sleep.
Yes.
But I know I have to very consciously work on it.
Mm-hmm.
The folks, this stuff doesn't just come natural. It's when you're in that fight or flight, you're in the fight or flight. You are survival mode. So breaking out of that.
Yes. And it's not a healthy place to be. It's meant to only last for a few minutes. So
Mhm.
lasting for hours or days is very unhealthy.
Any other strategies from your book that you would like to share with the audience, Lisa?
You just mentioned one. I start every day with really spending some time thinking about what I'm grateful for.
Mm,
Because all of us could think about all these things that why life is not perfect and why did this happen and why did that happen. But if you stop and think, maybe here's the things you're really wanting to dwell on that's not good, but you can come up with a long list of things I am grateful for. And I
mm,
mean, it could be the amazing cup of coffee you get to drink, or the chair you're sitting in, or your own health, or other family members, or whatever. But think about when you spend time on that, it makes everything else seem so small. That's
definitely.
very healthy.
It was in April. Oh my, we're coming up on April again. It was
Yes.
April last year. I knew with my business I needed to start doing social media, and I hated it. I hated getting on video. I mean, I was doing podcasts, but at the time they were all audio, not like I do now where it's video. And I woke up on the morning of April 1st and I said, I'm going to do a video a day in April with just something to be thankful for.
Oh, good.
So it was my April of gratitude, and it's what broke me out of my fear of doing something new and putting myself out there. But what I found is the more I did it, the easier it was to think about just the small little things
Yes.
to be grateful for. The bird, my cup of coffee. There was one I stood outside under one of my favorite oak trees with my cup of coffee,
Yes.
making make it a video. But
Life
it
is
was
good.
life is good, and I think we get so caught up. And as we work with our families who have aphasia or a progressive challenge, Parkinson's, primary progressive, dementia,
Mhm.
that it's easy to lose track of. I woke up today.
Yes.
I woke up today and I have this giant glass of water that I'm going to drink, and I'm going to feel better because of it.
Yes. I think about so many patients as you're talking about. I'm thinking about one right now that I saw in his home for home health. He had Parkinson's disease, and it was pretty late stage, so he could not say anything that any of his family could understand. I couldn't understand him either. And yet, as you know, we can get them to sing when they can't talk. And he had been a church music director. And so we got to the point that he could sing perfectly the song "It Is Well With My Soul." And it was
Oh,
so beautiful. And he was staying with his sister, and she videoed it and sent it to the other family members. And it was a huge moment of joy. He felt it. We all felt it. And he was singing the words that he loved so much and believed, and that brought him such joy. And it was something that we are all grateful for. He's not going to be perfect again, but he's still an amazing man. He had a lot to offer. He could write, he communicated that way, and he could sing beautifully. So there's always something that we have to
it's
be
perspective.
grateful for.
There is always something to be grateful for. I love that. But
Yeah.
it's all in the perspective. Find something. I have a conversation group I run on Fridays, and now we either start or end the session with a win. And
Good.
it's interesting to see how the participants have evolved. They've gone from something very concrete, like the weather or whatever it is, to something a little more less tangible, more meaningful for them, like a good
Yes.
conversation with their spouse,
Hmm.
whatever the case may be. And it's really fun to see how they've progressed and how they are embracing this
Yes. How we have this moment
gratitude.
together. Yes.
And all of this builds resilience so that we can tolerate.
Yes. And still move forward at a different level, but still moving forward and still enjoying our life and celebrating what we have, not focusing on what we don't have.
That's right. Lisa, I'm grateful to know you, and thank you for spending the time with us today and sharing your career and your book.
Thank you
Tell
for
us.
all that you do and for all the lives that you touch. You're doing amazing work and helping many. So thank you.
I appreciate that very much. And so your book is Resilience. Tell us the title, the working title again.
Resilience, rising above life's challenges. It will be on Amazon at some point, so I'll let you know when it comes out.
Absolutely. Folks, that's going to definitely be a book to get your hands on. I will be getting one for myself because we all need a reminder that we are resilient and we just have to make small steps to making those
Yes,
changes.
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen for Life podcast. We hope you feel empowered and supported. Head over to listenforlifepodcast.com to see the show notes with links and information from today's episode. Do you have a topic, a resource to share, or a guest recommendation? Inquiring minds want to know. Let us know in the comments section. Wishing you a fabulous week.